I didn't think Thursday night would turn into the longest, most terrifying night of my life. If you had told me earlier that day that I'd be spending the night locked inside a Walmart, I would have laughed and said you've been watching too many horror movies. But reality has a way of blindsiding you. It had been a regular school day in late January, cold enough that you could see your breath in the morning air, but not cold enough for them to cancel classes. I was exhausted from a history quiz, a mile run in gym, and 2 hours of homework. All I wanted to do after getting home was collapse on the couch and mindlessly scroll on TikTok until I passed out. But Mom had other plans. I was sitting at the kitchen table, spoon halfway to my mouth, when she came in from work shaking snow off her hair. Mom, hey, I know you're tired, but we need to run to Walmart tonight. We're out of almost everything. Me, can't we go tomorrow? I have like zero energy right now. Mom, tomorrow I have the late shift, remember? If we don't go now, we'll be eating dry cereal for dinner this weekend. She had a point. Our fridge was looking pretty tragic. So after dinner around 7:20 p.m., we bundled up, climbed into our old Subaru, and headed to River Point Walmart, the one off Interstate 72. It was the only supercenter in town. Groceries, clothes, electronics, furniture, you name it. The kind of place where you run into three people you know every time you go. The parking lot lights glowed that pale orange you only see in winter, reflecting off the thin layer of slush on the asphalt. The big blue and yellow Walmart sign buzzed faintly above the sliding glass doors. A cold wind cut through my jacket as soon as I stepped out of the car. Inside, the whoosh of warm air hit my face. The familiar smell of floor cleaner and fried food from the subway near the entrance wrapped around me. Mom, grab a cart, Jack. Me, got it. The front end was quiet. Maybe a dozen shoppers scattered around. The overhead speakers played a muffled pop song I barely recognized. A cashier yawned at the self-checkout area. The aisles stretched out under harsh fluorescent lights, endless rows of merchandise disappearing into the distance. We moved through our usual route. Produce first, then dairy, then snacks. Mom compared prices while I trailed behind, occasionally tossing something into the cart. Mom, do you want apples or bananas this week? Me, bananas. The apples last time tasted like cardboard. Mom, noted. By about 8:10, our cart was nearly full. Mom glanced at her list and frowned. Mom, we still need printer ink and some pens. Where's the office supplies again? Me, near the electronics, back of the store. We pushed the cart past the toy section toward electronics. The office supplies aisle was half-stocked, with random off-brand pens scattered among the name brands. I grabbed a 10-pack while Mom studied the printer cartridges. My eyelids felt heavy, and my back ached from standing around. That's when I realized I needed the bathroom. Me, hey, I'm gonna run to the restroom. Meet you up front? Mom, sure, but don't take forever. They close earlier on weekdays. I didn't think twice about it. The bathrooms were just past electronics, down a short hallway. The lighting there was dimmer, the hum of the main store fading behind me. Inside, the restroom smelled faintly of bleach. 2 stalls, 2 sinks, 1 flickering fluorescent tube above the mirror. I ducked into the stall, scrolling my phone for a few minutes while taking care of business. When I stood up to leave, I gave the lock a twist. It didn't move. I jiggled the latch. Nothing. I twisted it the other way. Still nothing. A tiny jolt of irritation hit me. These locks always stick. I tried again, harder this time. The metal scraped against the frame with a squeal but refused to budge. Me, muttering, "You've got to be kidding me." After about a minute of rattling and pushing with my shoulder, it finally clicked open. I stepped out, annoyed but relieved, until I noticed something was off. The hallway outside was silent, completely silent. I walked toward electronics. Half the lights were out. The big TVs on the display wall were black. The faint music that had been playing earlier was gone. When I turned the corner toward the front of the store, my stomach dropped. The registers were dark. No cashiers, no customers, no carts. The sliding entrance doors were shut, their glass reflecting the empty aisles behind me. Outside, the parking lot looked deserted under the orange lamps. A few random cars sat like abandoned shells, snow gathering on their windshields. Me calling out, "Mom!" My voice echoed in the massive space. No answer. Panic trickled in. I jogged to the customer service desk. Empty. No ringing phones, no movement, just the low hum of the lights. I tried the main doors. Locked. The automatic sensors didn't even react. I pushed hard, but they didn't give an inch. Me, to myself. Okay, maybe there's another way. I rushed toward the garden center exit. Also locked. The glass was so cold it fogged when I breathed near it. I checked my pockets. No phone. My battery had been dead earlier, and I'd left it in Mom's tote bag. Me. Perfect. Just perfect. My chest tightened. I paced the front of the store, calling out every couple of minutes. Me. Hello? Is anyone here? Nothing. I wandered deeper into the aisles, the sound of my sneakers squeaking against the polished floor unnervingly loud. Every shadow felt like it was watching me. The store, a place I'd always associated with noise and people, now felt wrong. Too big. Too empty. After maybe 20 minutes, I heard it, a faint humming from somewhere in the back. My pulse jumped. I followed the sound past the frozen foods, peeking around the corner. There was a man in a blue Walmart vest, pushing one of those big floor cleaning machines. He had large earmuff-style headphones on, completely oblivious. I nearly cried with relief. Me running toward him. Hey, wait! He startled, pulling off his headphones. Worker. Whoa! Where the hell did you come from? Me. I got stuck in the bathroom, and when I came out, everyone was gone. The doors are locked. Worker. Jesus. You serious? Me. Yes. I've been walking around for like half an hour. He grabbed his walkie-talkie. Worker into radio. Lisa, you there? We've got a situation. Found a kid still in the building. Minutes later, a woman in a manager badge and a security guard appeared from the back offices. Their faces mirrored shock and guilt. Manager, Lisa. Oh my God, we didn't check the bathrooms. I am so sorry. Security guard. We'll get the doors open right now. Where's your mom? Me. She was here earlier. I think she might have left, thinking I was with her. Before they could respond, I heard fast footsteps pounding from the front. My mom rounded the corner, face pale, eyes wet. Mom. Jack. She pulled me into the tightest hug I've ever felt. Mom. I thought something happened to you. I called the police. Me. I'm okay. The manager kept apologizing, promising this will never happen again, while the security guard unlocked the front doors. The cold air outside stung my face, but I didn't care. It meant I was out. Mom kept a hand on my shoulder the whole walk to the car. That night, lying in bed, I kept seeing the empty aisles in my mind. The shadows, the stillness, the feeling that I was somewhere I wasn't meant to be. I realized something that will probably stick with me forever. There's nothing quite as terrifying as being completely alone in a place that's supposed to be full of people. Story 2, I never thought I'd remember something as vividly as this for the rest of my life. But it's been 12 years, and I can still hear the way her voice wrapped around those 3 words. Just over here. I was 13 that spring, old enough to think I was too mature for childish fears, young enough to still trust people more than I should have. My name's Maya Ross, and back then, I lived in a small town in southern Ohio called Millbrook. It was one of those towns where everyone knew who worked at the post office, which teacher gave the hardest tests, and whose dog got loose last week. We had one Walmart supercenter on the outskirts, big enough to feel like the city compared to our tiny Main Street. I lived with my mom, my stepdad, and my half-brother Ryan, who was 16. Ryan had just gotten his learner's permit and was practically begging for any excuse to drive. That Friday night in April, the air still held a leftover chill from winter, but the days were getting longer. We'd finished dinner, spaghetti and garlic bread, when Mom suddenly realized we were out of half the stuff for her Sunday recipe and some cleaning supplies. Mom, I was going to go earlier, but I'm beat. Could one of you take a trip to Walmart? Ryan, perking up instantly. I'll go. I need driving hours. Mom, take Maya with you? And your dad, don't be speeding. My stepdad, Chris, grabbed the grocery list from the fridge. Chris was quiet, No nonsense. The kind of guy who didn't linger in stores. If you went with him, it was get in, get out. I didn't mind. I liked Walmart at night. The fluorescent aisles felt calmer, emptier, like the place belonged to us alone. We piled into Chris's old silver Ford Escape around 8:45. Ryan insisted on driving there, so Chris reluctantly handed him the keys with the warning, "No music blasting, keep your eyes on the road." I sat in the back seat, my hoodie zipped up, scrolling through my phone as we passed familiar darkened houses. The radio hummed low, some old country song Chris liked. By the time we pulled into the Walmart lot, the sky had that deep denim blue glow just before true night. The big front lights of the store threw bright rectangles across the asphalt. But outside those pools of light, shadows thickened. Walmart at night wasn't empty, but it felt slower. A few scattered shoppers pushed carts, the hum of the refrigerators mixing with faint overhead music. Somewhere in the distance, a mop bucket squeaked. We grabbed a cart, Chris steering with the grocery list in hand. Ryan and I followed. Ryan, tossing in a bag of chips. "Mom's not here to say no." Chris, without looking back. "If it's not on the list, it's not coming home." We moved quickly. Bread, milk, eggs, a case of water, some detergent. I wandered off for a second to grab granola bars, my shoes squeaking slightly on the polished floor. When I came back, Ryan was scrolling his phone while Chris was already unloading items at checkout. The cashier, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes, scanned everything with mechanical rhythm. Cashier, "Have a good night." Chris, "You too." It was just after 9:20 when we walked out. The temperature had dipped noticeably. The lot was quieter now. Fewer cars, more shadows between the rows. The tall sodium vapor lights buzzed faintly overhead, their glow turning the pavement a dull yellow. Our car was parked farther out than usual. Most close spots had been full earlier. Chris clicked the unlock button, and the headlights blinked. We started loading bags. I put the bread and eggs in the back seat while Ryan stacked water bottles in the trunk. My fingers were cold. My breath came in little clouds. That's when I heard it. A woman's voice, soft, almost apologetic. "Stranger, excuse me, sweetheart?" I turned. She stood maybe 15 feet away, just beyond the reach of the nearest light, where the glow faded into shadow. She looked to be in her late 40s, maybe early 50s, with shoulder-length dark hair that frizzed slightly in the damp air. She wore a long beige coat that brushed her knees and scuffed brown boots. She cradled a cardboard box against her chest like it was heavy. "Stranger, could you give me a hand real quick?" My shoulder's acting up, and I can't get this into my van. Her tone was gentle, almost warm, but her eyes, they didn't match the softness in her voice. They were fixed on me in a way that made my stomach dip. Before I could answer, Ryan stepped closer, placing himself slightly between us. "Ryan, sorry, we're in the middle of something." Her smile didn't fade. "Stranger, it'll only take a second. Just over here." She tilted her head toward a dark-colored van, 2 spaces down, its side door facing away from the store lights. The windows looked tinted. My throat felt tight. "Ryan, we can't." "Sorry." The woman didn't move for a second, as if waiting for me to speak instead. Then she gave a small shrug. "Stranger, all right, no problem." She turned and walked toward the van. Her boots clicked softly on the pavement. She didn't look back. Ryan's hand touched my arm. "Ryan, get in." I slid into the back seat without arguing. My heart was pounding now, though I couldn't explain exactly why. Chris got in the driver's seat. "Chris, what's going on?" Ryan shut his door. "Ryan, some lady wanted help lifting a box into her van." Chris's head turned sharply. "Chris, where?" Ryan, "Couple spaces over. Black or dark blue van. She was weird." Chris checked the rearview mirror, scanning the lot. "Chris, you see her now?" Ryan and I both looked, but the van was gone. Or maybe it was still there, hidden in the patchy light. Chris's jaw tightened. "Chris, you did the right thing. Never go with strangers. Doesn't matter how nice they seem." The drive home felt longer than usual. No one talked much. The only sound was the tires on the road and the low hum of the radio. The next afternoon, Chris called Walmart to let the manager know what happened. He didn't expect much, just wanted to give a heads up. But the store called back that evening. The manager sounded uneasy. They checked the security cameras. The woman had been in the parking lot several nights that week, never went inside. Sometimes she stood between cars. Sometimes she walked up to teens or kids, always alone, always carrying that same box. They'd already sent the footage to the police. Ours wasn't the first report. 2 days later, Chris's friend from the sheriff's office stopped by. He pulled Chris aside, but I overheard enough from the hallway. The woman, or someone matching her description, had been spotted in a town 30 miles away, again at night, again in a big box store parking lot. Same approach, same box. She always left when adults got close. I still think about it sometimes. How normal she looked, how calm her voice was, how easy it would have been to take just a few steps toward that van. Just a few steps. And maybe I wouldn't be here to tell you this. Story 3. I didn't think a night shift at Harbor Mart would ever make me scared to walk into a building again. Back in 2021, I was 32, living in Clearwater, Florida, and life was messy. I'd been laid off from a front desk job at a hotel after tourism tanked during the pandemic, and bills were chewing through my savings. The overnight stalker position at Harbor Mart wasn't glamorous, but it paid just enough more than day shift to keep my electricity on. Harbor Mart isn't as big as a Walmart, but it's still one of those cavernous, fluorescent-lit box stores where the ceiling feels miles above you. Grocery section on the left, home goods and seasonal in the middle, automotive and gardenway in the back. I work 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., Monday through Friday, with a crew of 6. There was me, obviously. Derek, a 23-year-old who never stopped talking about cars. Layla, mid-40s, single mom, could outstock any of us. Carl, one of the janitors, a grumpy retiree who still mopped like his life depended on it. Jerome, the other janitor, younger, quiet, always listening. And our night manager, Brian. Brian was a strange mix. Strict about the schedule, but if something weird happened, he'd shrug and say, "Not our problem unless it's bleeding." The nights were usually quiet. By midnight, customers were rare. Maybe a trucker grabbing snacks or someone picking up cold medicine. The only constant sounds were the hum of refrigeration units, the faint music from the store speakers, and the occasional squeak of cartwheels echoing across the empty aisles. I'd been there about 4 months when the first odd thing happened. It was a Wednesday about 1:15 a.m. I was in the linens aisle, restocking a shelf of throw blankets. I reached for a sealed pack of 2, bright blue fleece, and the moment I lifted it, something felt wrong. It was light. I pressed on the plastic. Instead of the soft bulk of 2 blankets, there was just one. No rip, no tape, no reseal, just factory-tight plastic with a blanket missing from inside. I muttered under my breath, "That's not right," and set it aside. It wasn't the kind of thing you call the manager over for. Probably a manufacturing screw-up. Still, the way it was sealed perfectly nagged at me. The next week, something else. I was in seasonal moving a stack of outdoor storage bins. When I shifted them, I found an empty water bottle and a candy wrapper wedged between the shelf and the wall. Way back, in a spot you'd have to reach into on purpose. The candy was one of those 99-cent peanut clusters we sold. I tossed them in the trash, but a thought stuck in my mind. Customers didn't have access to this part of the store. It was blocked off. A few nights later, the red flag arrived. I'd been sent to the back stock area to shift some overflow merchandise. Behind a pallet of paper towels in a dim, dust-smelling corner, I found a folded blanket, not one we sold, and a small black duffel bag. The blanket was worn, faintly stained, and the duffel's zipper was half broken. Inside, a toothbrush, a travel-sized toothpaste, a pack of crackers, and a pair of men's socks. This wasn't a misplaced employee lunch bag. I carried it to Brian in the back office. "Hey, you should see this." He glanced inside, barely reacting. Probably one of the day guys left it. "With socks and crackers? And a blanket?" I asked. He shrugged. "I'll check later." That was Brian, never in a rush. The next night, I checked that corner again before my shift started. The blanket and bag were gone. When I asked Brian if he'd moved them, he shook his head without looking up from his clipboard. Carl, the janitor, just smirked when I brought it up. "Don't mess around in corners you don't need to be in," he said, his mop dripping on the concrete. That sat wrong with me. A week later, around 2:30 a.m., I was in toiletries when I caught movement in my peripheral vision, down near the garden section. That part of the store was dim at night, lit only by a few security lights. I pushed my cart toward it. "Hello," I called, my voice carrying in the emptiness. Nothing. The double glass doors to the outside were locked. I stood there scanning, hearing only the low hum of the drink coolers. I went back to work, but my neck prickled the whole time. The following night in the break room, I brought it up to Derek. "You ever see anything weird here at night?" I asked. He laughed. "Weird how? Like Carl picking food out of the trash?" "No," I said, lowering my voice. "Like movement or stuff going missing." He leaned back. "You mean besides the cameras glitching? Sometimes the feed cuts out for a few seconds." That got my attention. "You've seen that?" "Yeah, always at night. Always the ones near the back." Later that shift, I passed through the toy aisle and noticed a ceiling tile pushed slightly out of place, right above a tall shelving unit. I grabbed the rolling ladder from hardware, climbed up, and nudged the tile. A dark, dusty crawl space stretched above, with beams and ductwork running the length of the store. Right there, just inside, was an empty soda can and a crumpled granola bar wrapper. I climbed down fast, my heart pounding. When I showed Brian a photo on my phone, he frowned for the first time since I'd started working there. "I'll take a look," he said. The next night, the soda can and wrapper were gone. That same shift, Layla said something that made my skin crawl. "You know, last night I thought I heard footsteps above me in housewares," she said while breaking down a box. "Like slow ones. I told myself it was the air ducts." I couldn't take it anymore. After the store closed to customers that night, I slipped into the security room while Brian was on the floor. The monitor screens flicked between cameras. I rewound footage from earlier in the week, and there it was, 2:07 a.m. Garden section camera. A shadow moved. Not a trick of light, but a figure, darting behind the display racks. Too fast to get a clear face. I froze the frame, printed it on the old black and white printer, and handed it to Brian as soon as he came back. He stared at it, then called the store manager. By morning, the police were involved. That night, 2 officers showed up. They walked the aisles, then climbed into the crawl space above with flashlights. About 20 minutes later, one of them shouted, "Got something?" What they found made my stomach drop. A rolled-up sleeping mat, piles of empty cans, food wrappers, a small battery lantern, and, huddled behind ductwork, a man in his late 20s, clothes filthy, eyes wide in the flashlight beam. He'd been sneaking down at night for food and water, slipping into unused storage rooms, watching us. The cops said he'd been up there for weeks. After that, maintenance sealed the ceiling, replaced damaged tiles, and put locks on the roof access. But for months afterward, whenever I heard a thump from above, my pulse spiked. Because I kept thinking, if no one had noticed, how much longer would he have stayed? And what was he planning for the night he came down? And didn't just take food? Story 4. I never imagined a trip for laundry detergent could change the way I feel about going out alone at night. Back then, I was 28, living in a small apartment just outside Dayton. My life wasn't exciting. Most days were a rinse and repeat of work at a dental office, coming home, microwaving dinner, scrolling my phone, and maybe watching an old sitcom before bed. I wasn't the jumpy type either. I read those creepy, weird store encounter posts online, but in the back of my mind, I always assumed they were exaggerated. It was early October, a Wednesday, cold enough at night that you could see your breath. I'd just gotten home from work when I noticed I was completely out of laundry soap. I had 2 loads of clothes sitting in the hamper, and if I didn't wash them, I'd be wearing the same work blouse for the 3rd day in a row. I could have waited until the weekend, but something about that bothered me. Just go get it now, I told myself, even though I was already in my sweats and fuzzy socks. The nearest store was a 24-hour Mega Mart about 15 minutes away. I'd been there hundreds of times. It wasn't in a bad area, but it was one of those big echo-eye places that felt a little lonely late at night. I pulled my hoodie over my head, grabbed my keys and headed out. The wind bit through my sleeves as I crossed the parking lot to my car. The streets were quiet, just a few headlights here and there. By the time I got to Megamart, the lot was maybe a quarter full. The bright white floodlights over the building gave everything a washed-out, almost hospital-like feel. I found a spot closer to the cart return than the entrance, killed the engine, and sat for a second. I could hear the wind outside, rattling something metal. "Get in! Get the soap! Get out!" I muttered, pushing the door open. The automatic doors whooshed apart, letting in a faint smell of floor cleaner and fried food from the in-store cafe. The place was quiet, too quiet. Usually there were at least a few families, a couple of teenagers messing around in electronics. Tonight, just a handful of scattered shoppers. As I grabbed a cart, a man came power walking from the back of the store toward the exit. He clutched a plastic bag in one hand, his eyes darting everywhere like he was being chased. He passed within a few feet of me, and I swear his expression was pure fear. No one stopped him, no alarms. "Probably shoplifting," a voice muttered nearby. I turned to see an older cashier shaking her head, scanning a box of cereal for a lone customer. I kept walking, trying to shake the weirdness. The detergent aisle was toward the back, so I cut through snacks first. That's when it happened the first time. A faint tap on the back of my neck. Wet. Cold. I stopped mid-step and touched the spot. My fingers came away with something slick and faintly cloudy. For a split second, I thought maybe condensation from the ceiling pipes. But when I looked up, there was no leak, just a clean white ceiling and rows of fluorescent lights humming softly. I rubbed it off on my hoodie and moved on, but the uneasy feeling had started. In the canned goods aisle, it happened again, this time right on my forearm. A thicker drop. The smell hit me instantly. Sour, rank, like spoiled milk and something worse. "Ugh," I whispered, yanking some paper towels from a display pack and wiping furiously. I scanned the shelves and floor above me, but there was nothing. No spill, no broken jar, nothing. I should have left. My gut was practically screaming at me, but my brain, stupidly, kept repeating, "It's just something gross from the ceiling. Don't be paranoid." I turned down the beverage aisle and froze. About 8 feet up, on top of the shelving, crouched a man. His clothes were filthy, his hair matted into greasy clumps. His face was pale, almost waxy, except for the grin stretched far too wide. In one hand, he held a clear plastic squeeze bottle, half full of a cloudy liquid. Before I could react, he squeezed. The stream hit my shoulder and splattered across my chest. Warm, smelly, wrong. I stumbled back, the cart rattling against my legs. "What the?" He giggled, a high, breathless sound that made my stomach flip. "Hey, get down!" I shouted, but my voice cracked. My heart was hammering so hard it hurt. I turned and bolted. My sneakers squealed against the tile. "Help! There's—" I didn't even finish. Two employees near the service desk looked up, confused. "There's a guy! On the shelves! He's spraying stuff!" I gasped, holding out my arm. The smell made one of them recoil instantly. "What the hell?" one muttered. Then from somewhere deeper in the store, a woman screamed. The security guard appeared out of nowhere, hand on his radio. "Where?" he barked. "Beverage aisle," I choked out. He ran toward the sound, shouting into his radio. I stood there shaking, trying to breathe through my mouth so I wouldn't throw up. People were starting to gather, staring. A few minutes later, they dragged him out. His knees and elbows were filthy from crawling across the top shelves. His grin never wavered. As they hauled him past me, his eyes locked on mine. "Bet you'll remember me," he said softly. I nearly collapsed. The police came, took my statement, bagged my hoodie as evidence. That's when they told me he'd been hiding in the store for hours, maybe all day, climbing above the aisles, waiting. He'd done it before, in 2 other states. The bottle? Not glue, not water. I went home and stood in the shower until the water ran cold, scrubbing until my skin was raw. But no amount of soap could erase that smell. That was 2 years ago, I haven't been back to that Mega Mart or any big store at night since. And sometimes when I'm alone in an aisle, I still catch myself glancing up, just in case. Story 5. I never thought a retail job could leave a mark on me deep enough to follow me home at night. I'd been in management for almost 8 years, and I thought I'd seen everything. Angry customers, thefts, even the occasional fight in the parking lot. But nothing prepared me for the winter of 2016, when Brookfield's Weather Mart chewed up a woman and spit her out in front of me. Back then, I was 32, an assistant store manager making $18.75 an hour. It wasn't glamorous, but in Brookfield, Ohio, that was enough to keep my lights on and gas in the car. Most days were predictable: schedules, stock checks, talking to employees about dress code or tardiness. I could go entire shifts without feeling much of anything. Just autopilot, but some days had a way of getting under your skin. The first time I saw her, it was the Monday after Thanksgiving. Her name was Marion Hollis, though everyone started calling her Miss M by the second day. She was 63 with warm brown eyes and salt and pepper hair, pulled back under her navy weathermark cap. She had the kind of voice that could calm a screaming toddler in seconds. Soft, musical, but certain. We'd hired her as a seasonal cashier for the Christmas rush. The holidays were always chaos. Customers lined up 20 deep, carts overflowing, kids hanging off the sides like monkeys. But Marion was different. She didn't just scan items. She made conversation, asked about recipes when people bought flour, told old Christmas stories to restless kids. She made the checkout lane feel like a kitchen table. By the end of her first week, I caught her straightening end caps and housewares on her own time. "Can't stand a messy shelf," she said with a grin. And when she said it, she sounded like she meant life in general. One night near closing, I passed the break room and heard her voice. Quiet, strained. She was on her cell phone, whispering, "I'll have it to you Friday. Please, just don't change the locks yet." That's when it clicked. This wasn't extra Christmas cash for her. This was survival. 2 weeks later, I got an email from our district manager, Sharon Myers. Subject line: seasonal staffing adjustments. Per policy, seasonal employees cannot exceed 90 days without review. If headcount exceeds holiday projection, terminate staff before they reach benefit eligibility. No exceptions. I'd read plenty of emails like that before. Cut hours here, drop shifts there. But something about the phrasing, "no exceptions," hit wrong. It was corporate speak for, "we'd rather ruin someone's life than spend money on them." The Saturday before Christmas, the store felt like a beehive someone had kicked over. The parking lot was full, carts blocked the aisles, and the registers rang nonstop. My radio wouldn't shut up. Clean up in produce, out of carts up front, customers screaming in toys because we were out of some must-have doll. In the middle of all that, I walked past Register 7 and saw Marion, smiling at a kid in a puffy red coat, handing him a candy cane from her pocket. She looked happy, like she belonged there. Then my phone buzzed. Sharon. "Eli," she said. My name, no hello. "You need to cut Marion Hollis today." I froze. She's been here barely 2 weeks. Hours are too high. Payroll's over budget. Do it before her shift ends. We're short-staffed already. "Do you like your job, Eli? Because I can find someone who'll follow instructions." And that was that. It took me 20 minutes to walk from the office to her register. My heart felt like it was dragging an anchor. When her line cleared, I stepped over. "Miss M, can I see you in the office for a minute?" She smiled. "I didn't mess up the till, did I?" "Number just need a quick word." We wove through the crowded aisles to the back. Inside the office, she sat with her hands folded neatly in her lap. "What's up, honey?" I cleared my throat. "Marion, I'm sorry. We have to let you go. It's staffing cuts." Her smile faltered. "You're firing me?" "I wish I didn't have to. It's not my decision." Her voice shook. "I can't lose this job, Eli. I don't have savings. I've got rent, medicine. Please, I'll work extra hours. My throat tightened. "If I don't do this, they'll fire me too." Something in her eyes changed. Sadness first, then something sharper. "You're just like the rest," she whispered. smiling in my face while you put the knife in. She stood so fast the chair slammed the wall, then stormed out. The first sign something was wrong was the noise, a crash in aisle 9. Then another. I ran out and froze. Marion was tearing bags of flour from the shelves, throwing them to the floor. Clouds of white dust filled the air. Customers screamed. "Marion, stop!" I called, stepping forward. She turned wild-eyed. "Stay back!" She grabbed a glass jar from the baking display and hurled it at my feet. Shards flew across the tile. Employees scattered. Shoppers pulled out their phones. Security arrived, but she'd already moved deeper into the aisle, knocking over soda bottles that exploded in sticky fountains. "You took everything from me," she screamed. "You people ruin lives and smile while you do it." By the time police arrived, she'd found a metal curtain rod from Hardware. She climbed onto a stack of paper towel pallets, waving it like a spear. An officer stepped forward. She swung, cracking him in the shoulder. His taser clattered to the floor. 3 officers tackled her. She kicked, screamed, spit. And when they dragged her past me, she locked eyes with me, her face streaked with flour and tears. "You'll see me again, Eli," she hissed. "And when you do, you'll wish you'd burn this place down yourself." We cleaned until nearly 2 a.m. The store looked like a war zone. Broken glass, flour in the air vents, soda pooling in the tile grout. I drove home under the pale glow of streetlights, feeling like my skin didn't fit right anymore. 2 days later, I got a call from Kayla, one of our cashiers. Her voice trembled. "Eli, did you hear? Marion's dead." My stomach dropped. "What?" "They found her in her apartment. Pills. The cops said..." She left a note. I didn't ask what it said. I didn't want to know. Weeks passed. The store tried to move on, but something stayed. Late nights when I closed alone, I'd hear noises. Soft scraping in aisle 9. Flour dust drifting from the top shelves even when no one had touched them. Once I passed the baking aisle and I swore I saw a figure at the far end. Navy cap, hands folded, just watching. And sometimes when I'm counting tills, I'll hear her voice, so quiet it's almost a breath, right behind me. "You'll see me again, Eli." And I know she's right. Story 6. I never thought something as ordinary as a quick shopping trip could split my life in two before and after. But that's exactly what happened on an August evening in 2016. Even now, 9 years later, I can still smell the faint tang of air conditioning mixed with rubber and dust in that Walmart. I can still hear the sharp beep of the checkout scanners. And I can still see the way my daughter's ponytail swung from side to side as she walked away from me for the last time. My name is Rachel Lawson. Back then, I was 34, living in Ridgeway, Tennessee, a town so small it didn't even have its own movie theater. I was raising 2 kids on my own, Sophie, who had just turned 9, and Lily, my 6-year-old firecracker. Their dad had left when Lily was barely walking. One morning he said he was running to the gas station for coffee. He never came back, no calls, no goodbye, just gone. I worked at the Ridgeway Diner, pulling shifts whenever they'd give them to me. The job barely covered rent, but I told myself it was honest work, and at least I could be home in the evenings most days. Except that month had been brutal. Rent had gone up, my car needed 2 new tires, and school was starting in a week. I didn't want my girls walking in wearing faded hand-me-downs that were already too small. We'd been counting change in a mason jar for months. Between that and what I had in my checking account, I figured we had about $70 to stretch for backpacks, shoes, and at least a couple of new outfits each. It wasn't much, but I'd learned to make miracles out of less. It was a Wednesday, hot, sticky, the kind of Tennessee summer night where the air feels like it's pressing down on you. I picked the girls up from my sister's place after my shift. They were already buzzing. "Mom, can I get something with glitter on it this year?" Sophie asked the second she climbed in the car. "No glitter," Lily groaned. "We should both get matching shirts that say, 'Best Sisters.'" I laughed, shaking my head. "We'll see. First, we have to make sure we can afford shoes that fit your toes this time, Lil." We pulled into the Walmart on Haven Road around 5:30 p.m. The sun was low but still fierce, glaring off the metal carts outside. Inside, the store hummed. The sound of people talking over the buzz of fluorescent lights, the squeak of carts on tile. Back to school season had filled the place with restless parents and kids darting between racks of clothes. We started in the girls' clothing section, digging through clearance racks. Sophie found a purple hoodie she loved. Lily was obsessed with a rainbow-striped dress that spun like a carousel when she twirled. "That's 20 bucks, I warned her, checking the tag. "But it twirls, Mom." She gave me the big-eyed look she knew I couldn't always resist. I sighed. "We'll see how much we've got left after shoes." 2 hours passed in a blur of price tags, size checking, and bargaining with my kids like they were tiny sales reps. By the time we had backpacks, shoes, and 3 outfits each, my cart looked full enough to make me nervous. We were in the shoe aisle when I noticed him. He was tall, maybe late 50s, with neatly combed silver hair and a button-down shirt tucked into pressed jeans. He had the kind of smile that seemed warm, but a little too quick, like it was waiting for permission to be trusted. He was pushing an empty cart, but he wasn't really shopping. He lingered a few feet away, looking at the girls with a kind of focused interest that set off something small and sharp inside my gut. When our eyes met, he nodded politely. I gave the tight, half-smile women give strangers when they're not sure if they should be friendly or careful. A few minutes later, we moved to the register. The total came to $81.62. My stomach dropped. I swiped my debit card. Declined. Heat flushed up my neck. I knew exactly what had happened. The gas bill I'd paid that morning must have cleared later in the day, eating up the buffer I thought I had. Can you try it again?" I asked the cashier, my voice a little too bright. Same result. I turned to the girls. "We might have to put a couple things back." Sophie's face fell. Lily's hand slipped into mine. That's when I heard his voice close behind me. "Looks like you could use a little help." I turned. It was the silver-haired man from the shoe aisle. He held up a Walmart gift card. "Got $100 on this. Was just gonna grab some fishing gear, but kids ought to start the year feeling good, right?" From here, Rachel's desperate rationalizing and the girl's excitement pull her past her instincts. They end up leaving with him, under the promise of following to get the rest. But fuel problems make her accept a ride in his spotless white SUV. The pacing stays tense but deceptively safe, with warm banter and believable distractions. It's only in the last 15 minutes of their trip that unease returns. Subtle details like the absence of his wife at the store, a strange detour near the edge of town, and him splitting the kids up under the excuse of getting them food. By the end, the night ends in tragedy. Rachel's older daughter never comes back. The police find her body 2 counties away. The man, a parolee with a long history, is caught within days. But for Rachel, the sentence changes nothing. The story closes with her driving past that Walmart years later, watching strangers walk in with their kids, and wondering if they'll listen to the voice she ignored. Story 7. I never thought working a simple night shift could rewrite the way I saw the world. Back then, I was 19 and thought I had life, if not figured out, at least mapped in pencil. I'd just moved from my small hometown in Indiana to the college town of Brookfield, Illinois. Brookfield wasn't huge, but the campus gave it an energy I hadn't felt before. Music from house parties spilled into the streets on Fridays. Coffee shops stayed open until midnight for cramming students. There was this sense of movement everywhere, like the place never truly slept. I'd managed to secure a spot in the dorms after a summer of begging the housing department. I still remember stepping into my room for the first time. White cinder block walls, a bunk bed with a sagging mattress, and a single narrow window overlooking the parking lot. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Reality slapped me in the face about 2 weeks later. Tuition bills, book fees, meal plan costs, everything tallied up into numbers I'd only seen in car commercials. My student loans had barely scratched the surface. And if I didn't find a job fast, I was going to be eating instant noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner until graduation. I tried everywhere. The coffee shops, "We'll call you." The little diners near campus, "We just hired someone." Even the gas station down the street turned me away. That's when I remembered the Walmart on the edge of town. It was a little over a mile from my dorm, close enough to walk, far enough to avoid running into classmates if I had to work late. The "Now Hiring" sign was taped crookedly to the sliding glass doors. Inside, the place had that overwhelming smell of floor cleaner and cheap plastic. The assistant manager, a middle-aged guy named Kurt with thinning hair and a voice like gravel, interviewed me in the cramped employee break room. His questions were straight to the point. You good lifting heavy stuff? Yeah. Ever work retail? No, but I'm a fast learner. You afraid of late nights? No. 2 days later, I was clocking in for my first shift. My job title was front-end associate, but in reality it meant bagging groceries, pushing carts, and zoning, which is a fancy way of saying putting misplaced items back on the shelves. For the first month, the work was mindless but tolerable. The night crew was a weird mix. Single moms, a couple of high school dropouts, one college guy who spent every break vaping in the parking lot. Customers were hit or miss. Some were polite. Others treated you like furniture. But I'd heard stories, whispers, about how strange the store got after dark. The kind of stories employees only tell when the automatic doors are locked and the security cameras can't pick up their voices. Brookfield's Walmart gets all kinds after 10. One stalker named Elena told me during a slow Tuesday night. You'll see. It's like the place becomes different. You feel it in the air. I laughed it off. Creepy people existed everywhere, sure. But this was just a store. Bright lights, cameras, security. What could really happen? That question got answered in a way I'll never forget. It was mid-October, and the nights were starting to bite with cold. My phone buzzed around 5:40 p.m. It was Kurt. Hey, Taylor, he said. His voice rushed like he was juggling 5 things at once. Listen, one of the closers called out sick. I know it's your night off, but could you cover a few hours? Just zoning go-backs, nothing heavy. I hesitated. I'd been planning a night in Netflix, a cheap frozen pizza, maybe catching up on assignments I'd been ignoring. But the idea of extra pay tugged at me. Sure, I said, trying not to sound reluctant. Perfect. Clock in at 8. We close at 11. Easy money. The walk to the store was quiet, the streets dim under flickering streetlights. Inside, the fluorescent lights felt harsher than usual. The intercom buzzed with the occasional clean up in aisle 14, while the half-empty aisles echoed with the squeak of cartwheels. Zoning at night was almost meditative. You just grabbed a cart full of random items, socks in the toy aisle, cereal and electronics, and returned them to their rightful homes. But around 9:30, I noticed him. He was in the next aisle over. Tall, lean, wearing a dark green raincoat even though it hadn't rained all day. His back was to me, his head tilted toward the shelf like he was studying something intently. I stepped closer, smiling out of habit. Need any help finding something? He turned slowly, and something about the movement made my stomach tighten. His face was pale, almost gray under the store lights, with cheekbones that looked sharp enough to cut. His eyes locked on mine and didn't blink. Yeah, he said after a pause, voice deep and deliberate. I'm looking for fishing gear. I pointed toward sporting goods. That's aisle 7, past automotive. Just head straight and take a left. But his eyes didn't follow my gesture. They stayed fixed on me. You're really pretty, he said, smiling faintly. Can I get your number? I forced a small laugh. Sorry, I've got a boyfriend. But thanks. The smile dropped instantly. His expression hardened, eyes darkening like someone had cut the power. Without another word, he turned and walked away, the hem of his coat brushing the floor. I told myself it was nothing, just some random creep. But even after 10 minutes, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see that raincoat. By closing time, most of the employees were clustered at the front, locking doors and counting registers. I was about to clock out when I felt the urge to use the restroom before walking back to the dorm. Big mistake. The women's restroom was empty, the hum of the overhead light the only sound. I went into the last stall, dropped my bag on the hook, and sat down. That's when the feeling hit me, like the air had thickened. The fine hairs on my neck prickled. Through the narrow crack of the stall door, I saw it, an eye, staring, unblinking. My pulse spiked. I opened my mouth to say something, but before I could, the figure crouched low. A shadow slid under the stall door. Hands, long, pale fingers, gripped the tile and pulled a body through. It was him, the raincoat. I screamed, the sound ricocheting off the tile walls. Shut up, he snarled, lunging forward. His hands clamped around my wrists, pinning me against the partition. His breath hit my face, hot, foul, metallic. I kicked wildly, panic exploding in my chest. "Stop fighting," he growled, pulling something from his coat. A knife. Cold steel caught the fluorescent light for a split second before instinct took over. I drove my knee upward, slamming it into his ribs. He grunted, loosened his grip just enough for me to snatch the lanyard from my neck. The ring of store keys at the end became a weapon in my hand. I swung hard. The keys connected with the side of his face with a sharp crack. He screamed, a raw animal sound, and I shoved past him, bursting out of the stall and slamming through the restroom door. "Help!" I screamed, tearing through the empty store. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights flooded the parking lot. The police dragged him out of the restroom in handcuffs. I'll never forget the way he looked at me as they shoved him into the back of the squad car. That same faint smile like he was promising something. I quit a week later. Couldn't even walk past the building without feeling my stomach knot. Now, every time I hear about someone taking a night shift job, I tell them the same thing. Trust your gut, because when someone's watching you, you'll feel it. And if you feel it, you're probably right. Story 8. I was 9 years old. The winter had happened. Old enough to know the world wasn't always safe, but still young enough to think the bad things were far away. In scary movies, or in stories adults whispered when they thought kids weren't listening. Back then, my world revolved mostly around my mom, my little sister, and the quiet cul-de-sac in Denton, Texas, where we lived in a small rental house with peeling blue paint and a chain-link fence. Dad wasn't in the picture anymore. He'd left when I was 5. No big dramatic exit, just a slow drifting away until the phone call stopped. My mom never badmouthed him, but I could see in her face she didn't expect him to come back. She worked 2 jobs, slept maybe 5 hours a night, and still made pancakes on Saturdays. Money was always tight. I knew it from the way she counted bills twice before paying for groceries, and the way she'd say, "We'll see," whenever I asked for anything. But she also had this stubborn streak. She refused to let us feel like we were missing out on life. She'd scrape together enough to get us little surprises, like a movie night with dollar store candy, or letting us each pick one small toy before Christmas. That December in 2018, things felt lighter. Mom had managed to get a few extra shifts at the diner, and she said Christmas would be a real one that year. We'd even gotten a scraggly but real pine tree, instead of the little plastic one we usually pulled from the closet. My sister Mia was 6 then, still at the age where everything about Christmas felt like magic. It was the Saturday before Christmas Eve when Mom said we were going to Walmart to get the last of the gifts. It was around 4 p.m., that in-between time when the winter sun is already thinking about setting. She told us to grab our jackets. I remember groaning. I hated how crowded Walmart got around the holidays. But Mia was bouncing around like we were headed to Disneyland. The drive was about 20 minutes. The heater in Mom's old Corolla only worked halfway, so the windshield was fogged up on my side. We passed the same strip of fast food places and the empty lot where a gas station used to be. I remember because I was counting how many lit-up reindeer decorations I could spot in people's yards. When we pulled into the Walmart lot, it was exactly how I pictured it. Jammed with cars, shopping carts abandoned at weird angles, the air smelling faintly of exhaust and fryer oil from the McDonald's inside. Mom parked about 7 rows back, locking the doors with that sharp click sound. Inside, it was the kind of chaos that could make your head spin. Christmas music blared from the overhead speakers, some overly cheerful version of Jingle Bell Rock. People were rushing past with carts piled high, toddlers were crying, and the smell of buttered popcorn from the snack counter mixed weirdly with the scent of cinnamon-scented candles. "Stay close," Mom said, adjusting her purse strap. She looked tired the way she always did after a long week, but her tone had that no-nonsense edge to it. We headed first to the toy section. Mom wanted to grab a Lego set for my cousin. I trailed beside her, holding Mia's mittened hand, while she scanned the shelves. That's when I saw it. A big wire bin filled with those giant, rubbery, bouncy balls, bright as candy. My feet almost moved on their own toward it. "Mom, can I go look at the balls?" "I'll be right there," I asked. She gave me a quick glance over her shoulder. "Fine, but I need to see you the whole time. No wandering." I nodded and walked the few steps to the bin, my hands pressing against the cold metal rim as I sifted through the colors. I could hear the noise of the store behind me, carts rattling, someone calling for a price check, but it all faded for a second when a sharp, sour smell hit my nose. At first I thought it was the trash can near the snack counter, but then I turned and saw him. He was standing just at the edge of the aisle, tall, maybe late 40s, with greasy hair under a faded baseball cap. His jacket was torn at the sleeve, his jeans stained, dark at the knees. The smell, stale sweat and something like spoiled milk, was coming from him. "You like those balls?" he asked, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. My stomach clenched. "Yeah," I said automatically, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, his boots scuffing on the tile. "I got a whole bunch of toys in my truck outside. Way cooler than these." Something in his tone made the hairs on my arms stand up. It was too casual, too friendly. I didn't say anything. My mom's voice echoed in my head. "Don't talk to strangers, ever." But then he moved fast. He leaned down close enough for me to smell the alcohol on his breath and placed a hand on my shoulder. His fingers were rough, his grip firm. "Come on, kid," he said low. "It'll just take a second." Before I could think, he had my wrist and was steering me toward the main aisle. My legs felt heavy, like I couldn't get them to move the way I wanted. People passed by with carts, but no one seemed to notice. We were halfway to the sliding doors when a voice cut through the air. Sharp, angry. "Hey, what are you doing?" It was a woman's voice, loud enough to make him flinch. His grip loosened just enough for me to yank my hand free. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering in my ears. He turned toward the voice, a middle-aged woman in a red sweater, standing with her hands on her hips, and then bolted for the doors. I saw him push through them, running into the cold air toward an old dented pickup. That's when I noticed. The truck's license plate was completely covered in duct tape, and there was movement inside, two shapes in the cab, watching. Mom appeared a second later, her face pale, her voice shaking as she pulled me into her arms. I could feel her heart pounding against my cheek. We went straight to customer service. Someone called the police. By the time they arrived, the truck was long gone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his hand reaching for mine. I thought about the duct tape on the plate, about the people waiting in that truck, about how easily I could have vanished. Now, years later, I still go to that Walmart sometimes, but I never walk the aisles without my guard up. And I never ever let my sister out of my sight, because monsters don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they wait under fluorescent lights, smiling like they're your friend. Story 9. I never thought the job I took to keep myself in school would leave me waking up at 3 a.m., drenched in sweat, my ears straining for footsteps in my own hallway. In 2011, I was 20 years old, a second-year student at a community college in Northern Virginia. My parents weren't poor, but they weren't in any position to drop 10 grand a year for my tuition. Between gas, rent for the tiny apartment I shared with a roommate, and food, I was running on fumes. During the day, I worked shifts at a small sandwich shop off Route 29. It barely covered bills. So when a friend told me Walmart was hiring overnight security for their new 24-hour supercenter in Brook Hollow, I jumped at it. I wasn't a cop, not even an aspiring one. Just a broke college kid who figured walking aisles and keeping an eye out for shoplifters sounded like easy money. The Brook Hollow Walmart was massive. From the outside, it looked like a glowing blue warehouse squatting in the middle of a sea of parking lot. Inside during the day, it was chaos. Mothers wrangling, screaming toddlers. Teenagers skateboarding near the garden center. Retirees blocking entire aisles to talk about grandkids. But at night it was a different world. The first month, I worked the 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift alongside another guard named Marvin, a stocky guy in his 40s who'd been in the Army. Marvin always had a story, usually about Afghanistan or some bar fight he broke up in the 90s. He made the nights fly by. Then halfway through October, Marvin quit. No notice, no goodbye. Just didn't show up one night. When I asked the store manager, a wiry man named Phil with coffee breath, he just shrugged. He said the hours were messing with his health, Phil told me. "You'll be solo until we hire someone else. You'll be fine." I didn't like the sound of solo, but I told myself I could handle it. Friday, October 14th, I clocked in at 9:58 p.m. Phil handed me the shift log. Quiet night, stock crew will be gone by 1. After that, it's you and the cameras. I tried to joke. My dream come true. I get the world's largest store all to myself. Phil just smirked and walked away. The first couple hours were nothing. I strolled through toys, electronics, and groceries, sipping from the largest coffee McDonald's sold. The stock crew nodded at me when I passed. A young guy named Logan from Produce waved on his way out. "Don't fall asleep, man," he said. "Not planning on it," I replied. By 1:15 a.m., I was officially alone. There's a certain kind of silence in a place that's meant to be full of people. The air feels heavier. You start hearing little noises, plastic shifting on shelves, the hum of lights, and your brain tries to make them into footsteps. I was in seasonal checking the Halloween aisle when I heard it. A metallic clatter from the far end of the store. Not a small sound. It echoed. It came from the automotive section. I walked over, boots loud on the polished floor. My flashlight cut across rows of windshield wipers and oil filters. Nothing. Probably a stalker left something balanced wrong, I muttered to myself. Still, I made a note in the log. 1:27 a.m. Metal noise, auto section, nothing found. Around 2 a.m., I was near Garden when I heard footsteps in hardware. Heavy, deliberate, one after another. I froze, listening. I called out, "Store's closed. You need to come to the front." Silence. I turned the corner into hardware. Empty. The footsteps had been close, though. Too close. I started checking aisles one by one. Halfway down the third, I felt that prickling on the back of my neck you get when someone's watching you. I spun around. Empty. By 3:10, I was in the security office, staring at the wall of monitors. Nothing moved except the occasional flicker from the older cameras. Then camera 12, housewares, glitched. The image froze, went black, then came back. For maybe 2 seconds, I swear I saw a figure standing at the far end of the aisle. Tall, still, wearing dark clothes. Before I could focus, the feed cleared. Empty aisle. I told myself I'd walk it in a bit, but my bladder was screaming. I stepped into the men's restroom near the front registers and immediately noticed how cold it was. Colder than anywhere else in the store. My breath fogged faintly. I was at the urinal when I heard a laugh. High-pitched, almost childlike. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I turned my head toward the stalls. "Hello?" No answer. I bent down slightly to check under the stall doors. No shoes, no shadows. I zipped up with shaking hands and backed out fast, the hair on my arms standing straight up. Back in the office, I glanced at the monitors. Camera 12, housewares, had the figure again, this time closer. And then, he moved. He walked toward the camera until his face filled the frame. Pale, sunken eyes, thin-lipped smile. In his right hand, something metallic, a knife. And then the feed went dead. I grabbed my flashlight and ran for the front doors, keying the radio. "Base to Brook Hollow PD. I have a possible armed intruder inside the store." My voice shook so bad I had to repeat it twice. I heard footsteps, sprinting now, from somewhere behind me. The sound grew louder, closer. I fumbled with the override key at the doors. When I looked back, he was there. Full sprint, knife catching the fluorescent light. I shoved the doors open and dove outside, hitting the pavement hard. 2 squad cars screeched into the lot, lights flashing. The man stopped in the doorway, just watching me. Then he turned and bolted into the store. Officers chased him down in sporting goods, tackling him near the ammo case. His name was Darren Holt, 36, no fixed address. He'd been living in the ceiling space above the stockroom for almost a week. They found a sleeping bag, food wrappers, rope, duct tape, and a notebook in his hiding spot. On the last page, written in all caps, "Make it last." I never took another security job. I still shop at Walmart sometimes. But when I hear footsteps behind me, even in broad daylight, I feel the same ice in my chest I felt that night, because I know how close I came to being a name on the evening news. Story 10, I was 35 years old the night I learned that a store could feel like a coffin. It was late February in Millhaven, Indiana. The kind of Midwest cold that sticks to your bones even when you're inside. Snow had been falling in lazy spirals all afternoon, leaving the streets muffled and empty by the time the sun went down. My name's Daniel Vega, and until last year, I wouldn't have been caught dead working security for a retail giant. Not because I thought I was better than it. Hell, I've scrubbed toilets in gas stations and loaded pallets in warehouses. But because I used to have more. A wife, a daughter, a house that didn't leak when it rained. All gone now. The divorce took half my savings, the custody fight took the rest, and my own screw-ups took whatever was left of my pride. 2 DUIs, a probation violation, and a fist fight outside a VFW hall that earned me a misdemeanor assault charge. That was 5 years ago, and I'd been clean since. But in Millhaven, your past doesn't wash off. People remember. Employers remember. So when I saw an opening for overnight security at a Ridgemart on the edge of town, I didn't think twice. 18 bucks an hour, no drug tests, no endless background check. Just, can you start Monday? The hiring manager, a guy named Cal Whitmore, barely looked up from his laptop when I walked in. You ever done security before? Not officially, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He grunted. You'll be fine. Job's easy. Walk the aisles, watch the cameras, keep the parking lot from turning into a party. If something bad happens, you're not Batman. Call the cops. That's it? That's it. Oh, and don't smoke inside. Last guy didn't listen. You'll see how that ended if you meet maintenance. He printed out a badge, tossed me a set of keys and said, Monday, 10 p.m. sharp. Don't be late. I still remember the way Ridgemart looked under the midnight fluorescence. The place felt wrong. During the day, it was alive. Kids screaming in the toy aisle, carts squeaking, cashiers laughing, the smell of greasy food from the in-store diner. At night, hollow. The air felt stale. The sound system played soft rock from another era, and the aisles stretched out like frozen rivers under buzzing lights. The shelves were crammed with the kind of stuff nobody really needs. Discount appliances, bulk cereal, winter coats marked 70% off. There were maybe 8 night shift stalkers, most of them young and pale from living in artificial light. They barely nodded at me as I passed. The security office was a closet-sized room at the back of the store, wedged behind the customer service counter. Beige walls, a dented desk, 2 folding chairs, and a wall of monitors showing every corner of the store. The cameras were old, the kind with that static hum in the background and night vision that turned people into ghostly shapes. Cal stopped by around 12:30 a.m., sipping coffee from a stained mug. Anything happens around here? I asked. He smirked. It's a Ridgemart. You'll see things. Just don't film them for TikTok. What kind of things? Shoplifters, meth heads, bathroom weirdos. The usual. Then he gave me a grin like there was an inside joke I wasn't in on, and left. By 2:15, boredom had set in hard. I'd already walked the aisles twice, checked the loading dock, and thumbed through an old Tom Clancy paperback someone left in the office. I decided to grab a smoke. There's an emergency exit near Lawn and Garden that opens right into the parking lot. I pushed through it and was hit with a wall of freezing air. The snow had stopped, leaving the asphalt wet and glistening under the security lights. That's when I saw it, a '99 Chevy Caprice, paint faded to a dull maroon, sitting in the farthest corner of the lot. No lights, no engine running. It was parked so far from the entrance it might as well have been in another zip code. 3 other cars were scattered near the doors. Employees, obviously. But this one was hugging the tree line, swallowed by shadows. At first I told myself, maybe someone's sleeping it off. Maybe a long-haul driver in the wrong lot. But I could see it, the faint outline of someone in the driver's seat. Still as stone, no phone glow, no cigarette tip. Just sitting. My gut tightened. I took a last drag and went back inside. An hour later, I checked the monitors again. The car was still there. Same spot, same figure in the driver's seat. No movement. I zoomed the camera in. The night vision turned everything a sickly green. But yeah, someone was in there, head tilted slightly forward. Company policy said I had to check out loiterers. So I grabbed my radio, stepped back into the cold, and started the long walk across the lot. You ever cross an empty parking lot at 3 a.m.? Feels like walking across the ocean floor. Too much space. Every step too loud. The security lights flickered above me as I got closer. The car didn't move. No window rolled down, no engine turning over. When I reached the trunk, I tapped it lightly with my flashlight. "Evening," I called out. "Store's closed. You can't park here." No response. I moved to the driver's side. The guy was wearing aviator sunglasses. At 3 in the morning. His head was tilted forward like he'd fallen asleep mid-drive. "Sir," I said, knocking on the glass. He didn't move. That's when my flashlight beam caught the door. At first I thought it was rust. But no, it was too dark, too thick. Blood. Story 11. I never thought a late-night run for paper towels would make me afraid to leave my own apartment. But it wasn't the store that was dangerous. It was me. Or rather, the way I looked. Let me back up. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. Not a big city, but not small either. We had the usual. A couple of malls, 3 Starbucks within a 10-minute drive, and a massive megamart on the edge of town that sold everything from frozen pizza to fishing rods. I'd been going there since I could drive at 16. My mom called it the black hole because you'd go in for shampoo and come out with a blender, a scented candle, and $20 missing from your wallet. I'm 24 now, in my final semester of nursing school. Between 12-hour clinical shifts, assignments, and microwave dinners at 11 p.m., my life has been busy but predictable. No drama, no trouble, just exhaustion, at least until last month. It was a Wednesday night in February. My shift at the hospital ran long, and by the time I left, my brain was fried. I remembered I was out of paper towels, detergent, and, most importantly, coffee. The Megamart was on my way home, so I figured I'd just pop in, grab what I needed, and crash. It was just past 9:15 when I pulled into the parking lot. The cold hit me the second I stepped out of my old Honda Civic, that sharp Ohio winter air that makes your teeth ache. I zipped my jacket, shoved my hands into my pockets, and started walking toward the automatic doors, mentally listing what I needed. Paper towels, detergent, coffee, maybe a pint of ice cream if I was feeling indulgent. Then I heard it. "Hey, yo, girl in the blue jacket." I didn't even flinch. You learn to ignore that kind of thing. My eyes stayed on my phone screen, a reflex like armor. But then I heard footsteps, fast, heavy, slapping against asphalt. My stomach turned cold. I glanced over my shoulder. A man, maybe mid-20s, buzz cut, thick bomber jacket, moving toward me with purpose. I kept walking, faster now, telling myself not to run. Running makes you pray. "Jenna! Yo, Jenna, hold up!" I froze. "Jenna? I think you've got the wrong person," I called back, my voice tighter than I meant. He laughed. Not the warm kind of laugh, but the kind that says I know something you don't. "Girl, don't start. You know you still owe Deke. Let's not make this harder than it's gotta be." I turned then, because what the hell was he talking about? "Listen, I'm not Jenna," I said, my pulse kicking hard. "I don't know who you think I am, but it's not me." He stepped closer, his face shifting from amusement to something sharper. "Cute," he said. "Real cute. You always had jokes." I backed up a step, my palms sweaty inside my pockets. "I'm calling the cops." That wiped the smirk clean off. He closed the gap between us, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "You do that, and it won't end good for you." My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my phone. "I'm not who you think I am," I whispered. "Please." Something in my voice must have convinced him, because after a moment, he cursed under his breath, turned away and muttered, "This ain't over." I didn't wait to see if he meant it. I bolted into Megamart, my heart pounding like a drum. I hid in the restroom for 15 minutes, hands braced on the sink, trying to breathe. I left without buying a thing. I should have let that be the end of it. But I'm stubborn and broke. And 2 nights later, I realized I still hadn't bought paper towels or coffee, and I had a 6 a.m. shift coming up. It was Sunday afternoon. Bright, cold with the parking lot half full of minivans and carts. No buzz cut, no danger. I told myself it was fine. I grabbed a cart, wandered the aisles, even picked up a box of chocolate-covered pretzels I didn't need. By the time I checked out and pushed my cart toward the doors, I was humming under my breath. Then I saw them, a group, maybe 8 or 9 people, spread out near the far end of the lot. At first, they just looked like a crowd talking. But then I saw him, buzz cut, standing with arms crossed, staring at me. My stomach dropped. I tried to keep walking, head down, like I hadn't noticed. My keys felt like lead in my hand. Then a voice cut through the cold air. "There she is!" Every head turned toward me. They started moving. Fast. "That's her!" a tall, blonde woman shouted. "Where's the money, Jenna?" "I'm not." My voice cracked. "I'm not Jenna." They didn't care. "You think we're stupid?" she yelled. "You're dead." My legs moved before my brain caught up. I dropped the cart and ran, not toward my car, but back toward the store. My sneakers slapped the pavement, shouts exploding behind me. A hand grabbed my jacket, yanking me so hard my teeth clacked. "No!" I screamed, kicking, clawing. Then a deep, booming voice. "Back the hell up!" The grip vanished. I stumbled forward and turned. The Megamart security guard, tall, broad, face set like stone, was marching toward us. "Store security! Y'all need to leave now," he barked. The group froze. He pulled out his radio. "Cops are on their way. Anyone still here when they show up is going to jail." That did it. They scattered, melting into the lot. I collapsed against the glass doors, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. The guard guided me inside. "You're safe now," he said. But I wasn't. Not really, because later, when the police showed me a photo of Jenna, she looked exactly like me. Same brown eyes, same messy curls, same face. Except Jenna was dead. An overdose, they said. And before she died, she'd stolen $30,000 from a gang that didn't believe in forgiveness. And now, they thought I was her. I haven't been back to Megamart since. I barely go anywhere unless I have to, because every time I close my eyes, I hear them, calling her name, calling my name. Story 12. I never realized how quiet a parking lot could feel until that night at the Walmart on the edge of Prairie Falls, Kansas. Quiet, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet that presses in on you, makes your stomach clench, and turns every shadow into something you're sure is watching you. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd end up gripping my steering wheel so hard my palms ached, praying some stranger wouldn't come closer, I'd have laughed. That's the stuff of police blotters and true crime podcasts, not my life. But life doesn't ask your opinion before it twists. Before I tell you what happened that night, you need to understand something about me, my mom, and my little sister. We're not fragile. We've had our share of bad luck and bruises, but we've always figured things out. My mom, Karen, is one of those people who can keep going long after she should have stopped. She had to be. My dad, Rob, died 7 years ago from a heart attack at 43. He was a truck mechanic, good at it too, but the long hours, lousy food, and constant stress wore him down. When he was gone, the bills didn't stop. The mortgage didn't magically vanish. My little sister, Chloe, was only 10 at the time. I just turned 17. I remember Mom sitting at the kitchen table late at night, unpaid bills spread in front of her, a pen in her hand, calculator beside her, chewing the inside of her cheek like she could do math faster that way. We weren't poor enough to qualify for much help, but we were broke enough that every month was a gamble. Some nights, dinner was cereal. Some nights, she'd say she wasn't hungry while Chloe and I ate. I knew the truth. She was skipping her share to make the food last. When she finally got a cashier job at Walmart, it felt like a little piece of relief. A steady paycheck, health insurance, a store big enough to have cameras, security guards, bright lights. Safe. At least that's what I thought. The first time she mentioned Mark, yeah, that's his real name, she said it in passing. She was drying dishes, talking about her day, and slipped it in like it didn't matter. "There's this guy at work," she said, "kind of persistent." Persistent. That's a word women use when they don't want to sound alarmist. Over the next few weeks, the mentions came more often. Mark was older than her, probably late 40s, with that loud, overconfident way of talking that fills up a room even when no one asked for it. He'd comment on her hair, ask where she lived, say things like, bet it gets lonely without a man in the house. She'd laugh it off, change the subject. He didn't take the hint. Then came the part that made my stomach knot. One evening, while we were cleaning up dinner, she said casually, "Oh, Mark said today that if you or Chloe ever gave me trouble, he'd set you straight." I froze, dish halfway to the cabinet. "What do you mean?" She shrugged, too quick. "I think he meant it as a joke." "That's not a joke," I said flatly. "Report him. Go to your boss, HR, whatever. That's not normal." Her hands kept moving, wiping down the counter. "I can't risk this job, Sam. I need it." So she stayed quiet, and Mark kept pushing. It was a Friday in early November, the kind of Kansas night where the wind cuts through your jacket no matter how thick it is. Mom's car, an old Ford Taurus that coughed like it was dying every time she started it, was in the shop again. I told her I'd drive her to work and pick her up later. I had plans anyway. My buddy Travis and his cousin wanted to hit the gun range, and since I'd had my concealed carry license for a couple years, I figured I'd take my Glock 19 along. I don't carry all the time, but that night I had it holstered under my jacket. I dropped Mom at Walmart at 3:45 p.m., told her I'd be back around 10. The range was good. The smell of gunpowder, the noise, the focus it takes to hit your mark. Afterward, we grabbed burgers, joked around, forgot for a while that real life isn't always easy. By the time I headed back to pick her up, it was almost 10:30. The first thing I noticed when I pulled into the lot was a dented, rust-patched maroon Chevy parked way off by the tree line. A thin ribbon of cigarette smoke drifted out the window. A man stood leaning against the truck, heavy build, shoulders broad, gut hanging over his belt, ball cap pulled low. I didn't need to see his name tag to know. Mark. Even from 50 yards away, I could feel it. He was watching me. I parked near the doors. Mom came out, zipped up to her chin, scanning the lot without moving her head too much. "Everything okay?" I asked when she slid into the passenger seat. "Yeah." Too fast. "Would you mind grabbing a couple things for me?" "I'll give you the cash." She handed me a 20. Something in her tone made my chest tighten. "Sure," I said, getting out. The warmth of the store hit me, along with that fluorescent hum that's always just under the noise of carts and beeps. I grabbed a basket, headed toward the grocery section. Halfway down the cereal aisle, I saw movement in my peripheral vision. Mark. I told myself maybe he just came in for something. But every aisle I went down, he followed. 15 feet back, always stopping when I stopped. Watching. I ducked into the bread section, crouched to look at prices I didn't care about. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw his hands flexing, opening and closing, like he was getting ready to grab something. My skin prickled. I turned into the paper goods aisle and spotted a young female employee stocking shelves. I walked over. "Hey, can you tell me where the coffee filters are?" I asked, voice casual. She glanced up, smiled politely. "Aisle 14, I think." Then her eyes flicked past me, widened slightly. She froze for a second before going back to work. She'd seen him too. That was all I needed to know. I made a beeline for self-checkout, scanning 2 random items just so I could leave. When I stepped onto the gray tile entryway, I looked up, and there he was, outside now, leaning against the cart return, eyes locked on me through the glass. I pushed through the doors, the cold slamming into me. My truck was 50 feet away. Mom's silhouette inside, head bent over her phone. Mark stepped forward, hands deep in his jacket pockets. "Hey," he called, voice rough, too casual. "You didn't say hi." I ignored him, walking faster. "Hey, I'm talking to you." His boots scraped on the pavement. I hit the truck, yanked open my door. "Lock your door," I told Mom, sharper than I meant to. She blinked, confused, but did it. Mark was 10 feet away now, grinning. "What's his problem?" she whispered. I started the engine. "Don't look." He banged on my window, hard enough that my chest jolted. "We should talk," he said, eyes glittering. "Your mom and I, we've got unfinished business." I'd been calm until then, but something in me shifted. I pulled my Glock from its holster, kept it low, angled so he could see the grip. "You need to move," I said, steady but cold. For a long moment, he just stared. Then he smirked, stepped back, hands up. "Whoa, just messing around." I didn't answer. I reversed out of there fast, pulling toward the exit. We didn't speak until we were halfway home. "You had your gun?" Mom asked quietly. "Yeah." "Would you have—" She trailed off. I didn't answer. I still don't know. That night, we called Walmart's corporate line and filed a report. Mom quit 2 days later. Picked up a cleaning job instead. Less money, more safety. As for Mark, HR said they'd look into it. I doubt they did. Even now, months later, whenever I pass a rusted maroon Chevy in a parking lot, my stomach knots. Because safe isn't a guarantee. It's just a word. And words don't stop people like him. Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to comment and subscribe to my channel. If you haven't already, I'll see you again with another horror story. Until then, bye.